Alright, super quick review on these new Fishmate F14s. I've used mainly these Aqua One auto feeders in the past. They can do flakes really well. And you know, small pellets like the Kari sinking carnivore pellets, stuff like that. They work pretty well, but I get them fail. You know, I've got probably a dozen of them running, and I usually get one fail every kind of 6 months or so. So I'm getting a pile of dead ones lying around there, which I do use for spare parts, but you know, at around $40 a piece roughly, it gets pretty expensive for that sort of pretty ordinary reliability. So I tend to only get about a year, maybe 2 years out of them. I think it's just the moisture, they just die. I've also recently been using this one here, which is obviously a cheaper eBay knockoff of it. I found it sometimes gets stuck, whereas the Aqua one didn't. So I've only been having it for the past couple of months, so I doubt it's anywhere near as good. I've been also trying out these Islanders. The one on the right here is a Wi-Fi one, which, you know, made the setup pretty easy, I suppose, but these auto feeders, once you set them, you don't really need to reset them, so it's kind of a bit of waste of money. But that Wi-Fi one was actually about the same price as that Aqua one, which is about, you know, $40 or so they're still pretty cheap. The mechanism of feeding these guys is actually a lot better, because they've got the two holes here, and then you can really adjust how much you want to feed. So I found these are very nice and adjustable, especially for small amounts of flake, whereas these guys here tend to really go in big chunks, and it's quite loose. So, you know, that tends to not feed any, because the flake just kind of gets stuck there. You kind of need to get to about there before the flake starts coming out, and it kind of just pours out. So yeah, better for accuracy, these containers, but don't know about reliability. You can also set the Aqua one and the eBay knockoff to go 3 times per feed, whereas these guys, there's only once per feed. So if you want them to go a couple of times to get more out of them, you got to set them to go, you know, a minute apart or whatever. This is basically the same thing without the Wi-Fi, just manual setting, just like normal ones. So that was actually quite cheap. It was only about $25 on eBay. So that's actually pretty good. I've had this one working for a while. Get a fair bit of moisture in it, which is pretty normal for these flake ones, but it's been working pretty well so far. I've got it feeding a root. That's actually a very small amount of flake. It's literally feeding 2 little endlers. So, you know, it doesn't need to be pumping out heaps. So that amount in there will last, oh god, probably 2 months just to feed those 2 little endlers. Every time it runs, it only dumps out, you know, just a little, basically a pinch. It's kind of varies, you know, depending on each time it returns. You know, sometimes it dumps more out, sometimes that'll turn and literally nothing comes out. That's why you can see I've got all 4 of them set, so it goes 4 times a day, just a little pinch. Which brings me to the Fishmates. I bought these because none of these can do, you know, the classic algae pellets. Having a lot of placos and bristlenose, I like to feed them a lot. I go away a lot for work, so I wanted an automatic system for these. Sorry, one other thing I missed on the Alonda Wi-Fi one, which I just remembered. It's powered by USB, which is great because you never have to replace batteries, but also a pain in the ass because you need to have a USB power cord going to it. I would also worry about that rusting with, you know, so much exposure to water. Anyway, back to the Fishmate. This is great, so you can, you know, fit these pellets in here pretty good. These are the Hikari algae pellets. God, if they were a millimetre smaller, they'd be perfect. Sometimes these don't go through the hole. Yeah, watch, of course it goes through the hole. But yeah, sometimes they'll get, you know, jammed in there a bit and they don't really come out. Here's one that I've been running. I did get a couple of these. I've been running this one in my 3-foot tank. And you can see here, I had about 6 lots of pellets, or actually it was 7. I think every second one was algae pellets, sorry. And yeah, out of 7, 3 didn't come out. So that's pretty crappy odds. But that's purely because they are just stuck in there. They don't fall through the hole. You can see also, the downside of this is this thing has no bottom. So, you know, if you're setting this up and you're putting a heap of smaller, you know, things like these in here, and you've got the whole thing filled up, which I had at one point. I had everything filled up, and I was just doing these last ones, and I bumped it, and this was chockers full of, 15 pellets or so, and it bumped and sat up on a pellet like that, and that meant every single one came out underneath it, and I basically had to pull that off, resulting in this thing just being covered in all sorts of different food, like flakes and pellets and all sorts of crap. And then, yeah, basically I just had to tip it all off, sort out the different foods, and redo it again. It's a pain in the ass. So if you do get one of these, make sure you keep that nice and down tight. Don't bump it like that, because all the food will get stuck under it, and you can't fix it until you take it all out and start again. But I mean, if you're only loading this once a week or so, it's fine. Now I just finished my first week of using this. One thing that surprised me, which I probably should have guessed, because you've got this huge hole here where your food comes out of. A lot of moisture comes up, because obviously that's directly over your hole in your tank. So moisture, evaporation, especially if, like my 3-footer, it's only got one very small gap in the lids. So all the moisture that evaporates just goes straight into this thing. These are just, they're so soft and crumbly now, because they've just been full of moisture. I don't know how that would really affect them, whether they'd go moldy. But I've had this running for a week, so I've had it going twice a day. As you can see, I've had it running at 6 a.m, 6 p.m. Excuse the dirty fingernails, been gardening. So twice a day means you get 7 days. Once a day would give you 14. I would not go 14 days. You're going to get so much moisture in here, I would worry about mold or anything like that getting on the food after 2 weeks of being exposed to that sort of moisture. If you're not as lazy as I am, it does actually have a air hose line there. That would probably actually be a pretty good idea. It says, if you're in humid conditions, use pellet food and collect air line. I didn't do that. It worked all right. But anyway, you see you've got 2 more of these little pips here. So you can set more, more feeding schedules. I do like this. I'm going to get some more of these, I think. I'm just going to have to find some smaller food, so it does actually go through. And I probably will connect the airlines. It's just a pain in the ass when you're running dozens of these things, connecting airlines everywhere. But I think that would probably solve the 2 main problems. And I'll just have to be careful when I'm filling. Ideally, I'd love to see some bigger compartments, but honestly, it's feeding twice a day. It's not that bad. The only other thing with this is reliability. Obviously, I've only had it running for barely even a week. However, I've noticed that this thing is running. If I pull this off here, that is a stock standard clock mechanism. If I pulled that clock off the wall, you would find something that is bloody close to identical to that. And as we all know, clocks are friggin' reliable. You can even see here, it's got the arrows for adjusting the time on your clock. They just put a little sticker over where they've moved the little dial where you adjust it. So it's literally a clock mechanism. You can see that clock ticking away in there. That's nuts. So this thing should be rock solid reliable, because the way this actually works is this thing here just moves as you would move an hour hand, admittedly on a 24-hour clock, but so it only does 1 full rotation every 24 hours. So it moves incredibly slowly. The human eye is never going to be able to pick up on that. If I did a time lapse of it, you'd probably see it, but not going to that much effort. And all it does is, you can see up here, you've got these little tabs on the bottom, on the inside of this wheel. And as this clock moves around, where you put your red pips, I'll go backwards just because I don't want to break it. It clicks on a tab and moves it, which moves this thing over the next hole. The side effect of this, I don't really think it's good or bad, it's interesting, is that when this does move, it takes roughly 2 hours, or I think it actually is about 2 hours, to go from there to there. So it goes incredibly slowly like this over the course of 2 hours and eventually feeds them. that can be a good thing if you want to slowly feed your fish over, over a 2 hour period, once or twice or 10 times a day, whatever this thing can do. Could be a pain in the ass if you like my 6 foot tank. I've got a ton of rainbows in there with my vampires and my leopard frogs, and my rainbows absolutely decimate all the food as soon as it comes in. So I've got 4 auto feeders on that. I've got a combination of, actually more than 4. I've got 2 of those Aqua Ones. I've got 1 of these now, and I've got an Eheim twin. They all go off at the exact same time, so the whole tank just gets a whole heap of food dumped into it once, and the rainbows physically can't get to it all before it hits the bottom. With these, you couldn't do that with a ton of these. So, also flake food would not work well on these; it just gets stuck under here. But this is basically just a pellet feeder. You could use flake, wouldn't recommend it. Would be terrible. Would get moisture in there. Would just be horrid. But for flakes, these pellets, I'm going to invest in some smaller pellets. I think Hikari actually do some. I don't mind the Hikaris. I might get another brand. I don't know. We'll try them out. But I'm going to get some smaller ones of these and see how they go. But judging off these sinking carnivore pellets, they work brilliantly in this thing. I also had, if I get my little box here, this is what I basically loaded it with. So these are a protein pellet. Can't remember what brand they are. And then, algae pellets under there. And I had a mix of basically 50% was algae pellets, 25% these, 25% these. All those went through no worries. Algae pellets, almost half of them got stuck. And those that were stuck in there are pretty soft. I'm still happy to feed these to my fish. I think they're still fine. But if you gave them another week, I wouldn't feed them. I reckon they'd get mold or some sort of, some sort of crap on them. So yeah, even though it's set up for 2 weeks, would not use it over more than 1. But I mean, yeah, I'm going to keep using them. They're pretty good. I mean, there's no other options for these algae pellets. So yeah. Anyway, here's my quick little 12-minute review.